I used to think my life would be a series of peaceful days. After 8 years of marriage to Ethan, I thought we had everything: a lovely house, a steady job, and a love that I always believed would be eternal. But life is never as simple as we want it to be. Big storms never come the way we expect, and when they come, you can never be prepared in time. That morning, I woke up like every other day, feeling the warmth of the sun shining through the small window in the kitchen. I was making coffee when I heard Ethan's footsteps coming from outside. He's not a morning person, so I figured something was different. That day, I felt a vague anxiety, but I couldn't figure out why. He stood at the kitchen door, silent for a long time, then said words to me that I can't forget. "Honey, I mortgaged my house." I was startled and dropped my cup of coffee. The thick black liquid splashed out, but it was the cold feeling from his words that made me shiver. I stood still for a moment, unable to understand. "What do you do? Are you using this house as mortgage? How can that be?" Ethan sighed. The smile on his lips was thin, as if he didn't understand what he was doing wrong. "Clara, I just want some space so we can invest in bigger opportunities. Don't worry, I've calculated it carefully. But I can't help but worry. That is the house we built together, where we lived for 8 years, receiving so many memories. And now, you're betting everything on one decision without even consulting me." The betrayal in his words left me speechless. You're talking about careful calculation when I only see one trap that he got himself into. I didn't know how to react, but I knew for sure that the piece of our family was about to be torn apart. Before I could think clearly, a man wearing a vest entered the house. The main door opened and I saw a strange face. He seemed to be waiting for my approval. "Hello, I'm Lucas Moreno from Sterling Financial. I came to clarify some issues related to the mortgage that Mr. Ethan registered." At that moment, a real storm began to form within me. The words from the contract I had never heard of, the numbers I couldn't understand, all like shards of a broken mirror, shards of my own life. Lucas flipped through a stack of papers on the table, pointing to my signature. I looked at it skeptically. "This is your signature, right?" I suddenly realized that I had never signed any documents related to the home mortgage, but that signature looks a lot like mine. I can't remember the last time I signed. "This is not my signature," I shouted. Ethan stood next to him, his face unchanged. He looked at me with eyes as if waiting for an agreement, an acceptance from me. "Clara, you have to trust me. This is just a small procedure, but I can't trust you anymore." The words he said were just like a net spread to hide the truth. I did forged my signature, an action that I cannot accept. I looked up at Lucas, the word Representative Sterling Financial. He seems to be a very serious worker. After a moment of flipping through the papers, he looked at me with regret. "You have 72 hours to leave this house." Everything collapsed immediately. When Lucas left, I stood there, saying nothing. Ethan continued to try to explain, but all his words made no sense anymore. I feel like a boat without a compass in the middle of a storm. All I think about is house, a house that I now have no ownership over. I felt a numbness inside me. There were moments when I couldn't breathe. Ethan's coldness, the collapse of everything, made me feel like I wouldn't be able to stand. However, amidst the pain, a thought appeared in my mind. I won't lose everything. After a sleepless night, I decided to call Exit, the only close friend I trusted for many years. Jade is always someone who listens to me, someone who is willing to help even when I don't ask. Less than an hour later, she showed up at my door. "Clara, everything will be okay. It's all just a scam. We will find a way to defeat them." Jade didn't say anything more, but I felt the determination in her voice. I feel like there is a new breeze blowing into my life. She is someone who never backs down. While Jade encouraged me, I called another friend, is now a famous financial lawyer. She was the only person I thought could help me understand these complicated financial terms. Mia quickly arrived, and with Jade began analyzing all the papers Ethan had signed. We began to examine every detail and every word in the mortgage contract that I had never seen before. Mia and Jade discovered a horrifying truth: legal errors in the contract, a serious error that, if brought to court, we could win. With Mia's help, I filed a lawsuit Ethan and also Sterling Financial. Meanwhile, Jade's husband, Ryan, put me in touch with a team of real estate experts who would help us clarify Ethan's financial situation. At this moment, I felt like I was entering a real battle, and for the first time in all these years, I felt like I was not alone. The first few days after deciding to sue Ethan, I lived in a feeling of being torn between two worlds. On one hand, I have to keep my spirits up and take every step carefully, but on the other hand, my heart feels like it's being torn apart every time I see him. We still live under the same roof, share meals, sit on the same sofa, but all of that now feels fake. Ethan kept trying to convince me, trying to make me forget everything that happened. He often came close to me, put his hand on my shoulder, and said sweet words, as if everything was just a misunderstanding. But in my heart, the anger and hurt cannot go away. Every time I look into his eyes, I just see lies. He is no longer the person I love. He is a man I cannot recognize. While I was dealing with Ethan, things continued to progress in the legal battle. Mia contacted financial experts and lawyers who were able to discover flaws in the contract Ethan signed. They quickly pointed out that not only was there a problem with my signature, but there were also some extremely shady terms in the contract that Sterling Financial had put in place. "Clara, we have found out the truth. Surely this is a systematic fraud," Mia told me after verifying the contract. "We can win if we take this to court." I feel like I'm living in a movie. Everything goes by so quickly and nothing is easy. But in that moment, I felt like there was light at the end of the tunnel. Not all is lost. The house Ethan and I built together, could still be mine if I won this war. We started preparing the lawsuit, and I had to make an important decision. Did I want to really confront Ethan, the person I loved and trusted? I know that this is not only a war about property, but also a war about my self-esteem, about my dignity. If I don't fight, I will never have anything left. But if I continue, I could lose everything: love, marriage, and even my peace of mind. Even though I decided to sue Ethan, I still couldn't avoid those moments when I faced him. The brief conversations in the kitchen, the silent dinners, and the nights spent lying side by side in bed, each time I felt my heart ache. I don't know what to say to him, and I don't know whether to believe anything he says. One time, when I was about to go out, Ethan stopped me at the door. He looked at me. His eyes seemed to be pleading. "Clara, do you really think you can win this war?" he asked, his tone almost pleading. I remained silent and did not answer immediately. "Yes, I think I can win, but your question confused me. It's true that I can't predict the outcome, but I know I can't lose this battle, at least in terms of self-esteem." "You made a serious mistake," I said, my voice cold. "And now you have to pay for what you did." He looked at me for a moment, then turned away without saying anything more. It seems he also knows that things cannot be saved now. We were on opposite sides of the battle line, and nothing could change anymore. The first day of trial came faster than I thought. The feeling of stress kept me from sleeping well the previous few nights. I'm no longer the weak woman I was in the past, but I still can't help but feel nervous and scared. I know I'm facing an easy battle. The day the court opened the trial, I wore a black business suit, my hair was tied neatly, and my face was no longer soft. I entered the courtroom with determination and a heart full of anxiety. Mia was with me, and Jade was waiting outside, always supporting me during this time. When I faced Ethan in the courtroom, I could barely recognize him. He stood there with a black suit and cold eyes. He didn't look at me, didn't try to get attention, but I knew that he was still trying to get everything back. "Your Honor, I confirm that everything in the contract is legal and I have the right to decide my property," Ethan said, his voice calm, not at all worried, but I was not shaken at all. "All the evidence is there, all the testimony is ready." Mia worked with a team of lawyers, and we prepared a perfect plan to expose all the truths that Ethan was hiding. I felt my strength return, like an invisible source of energy. This is not just my fight, but the fight of those who have been deceived, of those who will never submit to injustice. The court battle is not easy. Every day that passed, I had to face arguments, difficult questions, and a direct confrontation with Ethan himself. But I'm not afraid anymore. Truth was on my side, and I believe it will win in the end. When I returned home after each trial, I still had to live under the same roof that Ethan once called ours. But there's a difference. I no longer feel helpless. With each passing day, I understand that more and more clearly, no one can take away your right to live your life. Whatever the future holds, I know one thing for sure. My life can no longer revolve around just one man. It will be mine, of the decisions I make, of the choices and fights to preserve the true values that I always believe in. That day, in a not-so-cozy living room, I looked in the mirror and wondered, who will I become after all these trials? A strong woman, or just a survivor of a painful war? I don't have an immediate answer, but one thing I know for sure, I won't back down. Every morning, when I wake up, it's the same feelings: stress, anxiety, and a little disappointment. My whole life now is like rushing streams in a river with no end, but at least I know I'm not alone in this fight. Mia and Jade are always by my side, encouraging me, helping me get through each day. The battle not only took place in the courtroom, but also in my soul. During each trial, each step closer to the truth, I had to face conflicting emotions. How can we maintain sanity and reason when everything around us is falling apart? When every truth, every testimony is against Ethan, the man I once loved and trusted? Every time I see him in court, I feel a pain in my heart. Ethan is not completely evil. He had good times, moments that I will always remember. But now, when I look at him, I only see an incomprehensible change, a figure that I cannot recognize. Today's trial is an important turning point. My entire team of lawyers has focused all their efforts on preparation. Despite the solid evidence, facing Ethan remains the biggest challenge. Today, I have to give an official statement in court. When I entered the courtroom, the atmosphere seemed suddenly cold. I could feel the eyes of the people around me, the attention of even unrelated people focused on me. Ethan sat opposite, looking calm as if nothing had changed. But I know that he can't calm down that easily in his heart. He was nervous because he knew that I wasn't someone who could be easily defeated. "Clara, can you tell the court what happened to the contract I signed?" My lawyer, a middle-aged woman named Kate, asked me. I nodded, took a deep breath. Mia prepared me every step of the way, from reading the contract to facing sharp questions from Ethan's lawyer. I just need to focus on the truth, and that's what I'm going to do. I began to tell my story, word by word. Little pieces of the story began to emerge. Details that I had never thought about, like unreasonable loans, unclear terms in contracts, all gradually came to light. Every time I mention those things, I feel a sense of liberation, as if I'm taking off each layer of the shell that I've had to live in all this time. I told him how Ethan had deceived me, how he had used me as a pawn in his financial game. His words before, the commitments he made, are now worthless. I remember the nights we talked about the future, about the distant plans he drew. I believe in those promises, believe in the love we have built. But now, it's all just a trap. The court was silent. Everyone around listened silently, and then the questions from the other side's lawyers began to appear. "Clara, are you sure you didn't misunderstand the terms of the contract? Is Ethan the person who directly asked you to sign this contract?" Those questions are not easy to answer. Meanwhile, I looked into Ethan's eyes. He didn't dare look at me. I know that at this time, he no longer has legendary stories and sweet words to hide the truth. I took a deep breath, then answered. "I don't misunderstand. I'm the only one in the family who saw everything, from the calls, from the notices, to the papers that Ethan told me to sign without ever explaining clearly. He blindly trusted me in his promises, but now I see clearly. It was all a fraudulent scheme. I don't look at him anymore. Now I just look at the jury, at the stern faces that are listening to every word I say. I feel like I've been liberated. Even though my heart still hurts, I'm no longer afraid. I told the truth. All I do now is just move on." After I finished my testimony, I returned to the waiting room. Mia and Jade stood waiting outside, their eyes worried but also full of faith. Kate, my lawyer, was able to crack a small smile, even though she didn't say anything. We know that, even if it's just a small step, we've moved a little closer to the other side of justice. But this doesn't end quickly. The truth never comes easily and immediately. The court needs time to analyze all the evidence, to consider all aspects of the case. During this time, I also had to face changes in my personal life. With each passing day, I felt like Ethan was becoming more and more lost. He is no longer the person I once knew, no longer the person I once shared dreams with. Now he's just a stranger, and I've learned to live without him. Although I have stepped on the path of victory, nothing is easy. The feeling of fatigue and stress still follows me every day. I remember the happy moments I once had, but then realized that I can't go back anymore. The only thing I can do is move on, face the truth, and rebuild my life. I started to notice that my confidence was returning. I am no longer the weak little woman of the past, no longer someone who depends on others to determine my worth. I'm Clara, and I have control over this life. Every day I gain a little more strength. Every step I take brings me closer to the freedom I've always craved. But not only that, I realized that this life is not just about fighting others, but also about fighting with yourself. I have learned that only when I accept myself and face all my mistakes and hurts can I be truly free. Every day I begin to appreciate myself more, and the most important thing, I am no longer afraid. Every day I wake up earlier, even though my eyes are still heavy from incomplete sleep. Sleepless nights thinking about everything and feeling like time passed in vain, as if the things I once believed in suddenly became worthless. But I can't let myself wallow in that feeling forever. It's all over. I must continue. As I walked out of the courtroom after the deposition, a cool breeze blew, and I realized I had never felt so relieved. That day I said everything I needed to say. No more burden in my heart. Mia and Jade both complimented me, but I just smiled gently and said nothing. Not because I wasn't touched, but because I felt I was too tired to continue sharing my feelings. I said it before, and now I just want to survive each day. But, as I know, this path is not simple. Every step was filled with new challenges, and it seemed like every time I thought I was about to find peace, a wave swept me further away. A week later, Ethan appeared in court again. This time, he no longer maintained the same confidence as the first time. His look was slightly confused, but still full of arrogance. There was still something challenging in his eyes, as if he never thought I could resist him. "Clara," he spoke up in the courtroom, catching everyone's attention. His voice sounded tired, but still filled with calculation. "Do you really think you can beat me?" He stared at me, his eyes shining with challenge. His words made me tremble. I recall all the memories of him, the promises, the gentle hugs. Everything is now just fragments, as if my life has been exposed before everyone's eyes. But I can't be weak anymore. I must stand firm. I don't need to win against you. I just need the truth, I replied, my voice determined. There are times when I think about my past with Ethan. At that time, we were the closest of friends, inseparable. They both dream of a future full of hope. But now I realize that I was blind. I deceived myself, thinking that love could overcome everything. I forgot that there are times when love cannot change the truth. After each trial, I spent time alone, in my small apartment. Those familiar walls, those objects don't change, but in my heart, everything is different. I feel like I have become a different person. There are days when I don't want to go out. I don't want to see anyone. I need quiet moments to remember the things I've been through, the times I stood on the brink, not knowing if I could survive or not. Mia understands this. She didn't ask much, just sometimes called or texted, encouraging me to go out and do something to not think too much about what was happening. Sometimes I complied, but sometimes I just wanted to withdraw, to avoid having to face the emotions rising inside me. Jade is also someone who is always by my side, although the way she shows concern is somewhat different. She always gives sharp advice, but also doesn't lack humor, saying things that make me laugh while I can't stop thinking about those long, long nights. Both of those girls are strong pillars of support in these days. They are the ones who keep me from getting lost. I started to find old hobbies, things I had neglected for many years. Reading, painting, cooking, simple things I used to love. Those tasks, although simple, gave me a sense of peace, as if my messy emotions could be sorted out. Every time I pick up a pen to draw a new picture, I feel a little bit of freedom, a little bit of hope returning. However, no matter how hard I tried to avoid it, the feeling of longing still kept coming. Love, that's something I can't deny. Even though I had to endure betrayal and deception, I still couldn't forget the feelings I had for Ethan. But I understand one thing clearly: love cannot be the reason for me to ignore the mistakes and injuries that I have suffered. Forgiveness can bring me a little peace, but forgiveness does not mean I will return to the past, to that man. There are times when I wonder, can I love someone again? Can I trust someone else while my heart is still healing? Those are questions that are not easy to answer, but I know that love is not something I can find by forcing it. It has to come naturally, as part of life. One day, while I was drinking coffee with Mia, she looked at me and smiled softly. "Clara, you know, sometimes loving yourself is the most important thing." That statement, simple yet profound, stopped me in my tracks. That's right, I forgot that before loving others, I need to love myself. I need to face myself, love what I have, even though I'm not perfect, even though I've made mistakes. And in that moment, I realized that loving yourself doesn't mean being selfish. It was the first step in being able to love others sincerely, without having to depend on them to determine my worth. Stepping out of the darkness of the past, I gradually found myself again. Day by day, I become Clara again, a strong woman who dares to face the truth, dares to accept all pain and then stand up. That feeling, inner freedom, is what I have longed for so long. I can't forget the past, but I don't let the past hold me back. I started thinking about the future, about what I could do to live a new life, without fear or regret. And although the road ahead is full of challenges, I know I will overcome them. The tears I shed during this war no longer make me weak. They are important milestones, memories I will carry with me throughout my life. The tears, the laughter, and the quiet moments. They made me who I am today, and I will never let anyone or anything take away my strength. Life after dark days begins to change. It's not that I completely forget what happened, but I've learned to live with those memories without letting them control me. I no longer limit myself to pain or regret, but instead, I focus on what I can change, the small steps I can take every day to take control of my life. Every morning, I wake up with a different feeling. It is no longer a heavy feeling when facing the past, but the anticipation of a new day. I started going back to work, to unfinished projects. I used to think I would never have the strength to continue, but now I realize that work is what helps me regain my spirit. It is not only a source of income, but also a way for me to find myself in this world. One day, while I was sitting in a familiar coffee shop, I received a call from an unfamiliar phone number. My heart beat a little faster when I heard a familiar voice from the other end of the line. "Clara, I'm Vivian. I have a project I'd like to invite you to participate in." Vivian is an old friend of mine, someone I worked with in the early years of my career. She's always been passionate and talented, and her project this time was an opportunity I couldn't pass up. "This project will be a big step for both of us. Do you want to try it?" she continued, her voice filled with determination. I thought for a while, then decided to accept. I feel like I can't keep living in the shell of past pain. This is an opportunity for me to reaffirm myself. Nothing is easy, but I believe that if I try, I will be able to overcome it. Even though I have decided to move on, I still cannot deny that the past is sometimes like a long shadow, always following me. One day, while I was in a meeting with Vivian about the project, a name suddenly appeared in the company email: Ethan Hawke. My whole body suddenly stiffened. Unbelievable. Ethan is working for a great partner that we are working with. And immediately, I realized something. I couldn't avoid him forever. There will be times when we will have to face each other, not just once, but possibly many times. I can't help but admit in the first moments my emotions were mixed. Anger, pain, and even a little worry about having to work with him. But I can't let those feelings rule me. This is my job, my opportunity, and I need to stand strong. The project that Vivian invited me to participate in was a large one, involving the development of a new online platform for the company. We had to work with a lot of partners and influencers in the industry, and everything happened quickly and intensely. Every day was a big challenge, but I didn't let that hold me back. I started to get acquainted with the new group, learned how to integrate with my colleagues, and gradually I felt like I had regained my strength. Step by step, I get closer to my goal. Every time I complete a difficult task, I feel like I have triumphed over a part of myself. And then, one day, the thing I feared the most happened. I received notice that Ethan would be participating in an important meeting where we would have to work together. At that time, I didn't know what to do. My limbs were a bit confused, but I told myself that this was my time to prove that I was much stronger than before. When I entered the conference room, my eyes immediately met Ethan's. We were both silent for a moment. Everything seemed to stop, and I could feel the pain we were both going through. But then I took a deep breath and got back to work. There is no more room for unnecessary emotions. I have learned to stand my ground. The meeting was quite tense, but I felt like I had the situation under control. Although Ethan has confidence, it cannot be denied that he is still a bit shy when facing me. Regardless, I proved to myself that I can overcome any obstacle without anyone's help. Later, I realized something important. It wasn't that I no longer loved Ethan, but that I had learned to accept the fact that we were no longer the right people for each other. Each of us has our own path, and sometimes leaving is necessary for both of us to find new opportunities. Ethan and I no longer have much contact. Occasionally, when we meet at work, everything is polite and professional, and although our past is still there, I no longer feel pain or hatred. I learned to forgive him, as well as forgive myself. I was no longer controlled by the past, and I began to truly live for the present, for the future. New job, new relationships, and most importantly, I found myself again. Clara is stronger, more confident, and ready to face any challenge ahead, and when I look back, I realize that I have come a long way. The tears, the sleepless nights, the times immersed in fear, all have become a thing of the past. But I don't forget them. They have helped me grow, made me stronger, and helped me understand the value of this life. Now I am no longer the Clara I was before. I am today's Clara, a woman who has learned to stand up from the brokenness and is ready to face all challenges. And the most important thing is, I learned how to love myself. Life is not always easy, but perhaps it is the difficulties and challenges that have helped me understand the value of every step and every decision on my journey. And today, when I stand in front of the mirror, I see a strong, energetic Clara, no longer the girl who was immersed in the darkness of the past. I see a woman who dares to love and dare to live fully with herself. The project with Vivian was a huge success. Everything has become not just work, but also an opportunity for me to discover new aspects of myself. Not only am I better at my career, but I'm also more mature in the way I look at life. The connection between me and my colleagues has become stronger, and new relationships have helped me expand my perspective on the world around me. Work is no longer just a place for me to escape, but a place where I truly find myself. The stressful working hours and sleepless nights have all become an indispensable part of my journey to maturity, and most importantly, I realized that the dreams I thought I had thrown away were now possible. Not long after the project ended, I met a man named Daniel. He was a very different person from anyone I knew. He wasn't perfect, but he had the sincerity and patience I was always looking for. We are not in a hurry. We do not force ourselves to be something. It's simply two people finding each other and walking together on a new journey. Even though I don't know what the future holds, I'm no longer afraid. I learn to accept what comes and know that no matter what happens, I can always stand up and keep going. Looking back, I realize that every challenge, every pain in the past has contributed to making me who I am today. Every wound is a lesson, every sadness is an opportunity for me to look back and understand myself better. I lost a lot, but I also gained a lot in return. And most importantly, I have regained faith in myself and in life. I no longer wait for someone to save me, because I know that I am the only one who can change my life. I don't know what lies ahead, but I'm ready to face it all. Because I have learned how to not only live for myself, but also love and cherish every moment of this journey. And I move on, with the firm belief that every step counts.